So imagine you run a delivery service, right? Like a classic, reliable courier.
Okay, yeah, I'm picturing it.
And someone hands you a sealed package, and you just drive it across town, hand it to the recipient. If it turns out there was something, illegal or harmful inside that box, the police don't arrest you.
Right, because you're just the driver.
Exactly. You're just the messenger. And welcome to the deep dive, by the way. You're here because you like to get into the technical weeds without drowning in all that dense legal jargon. And today, we really have the ultimate stress test for our internet laws.
We really do. It's a massive topic.
It is. We are unpacking this totally fascinating interaction where a user, Martin Stevens, handed ChatGPT a highly provocative prompt. Basically, he asked the AI to put on a lawyer's suit and legally analyze itself.
Which is such a crazy concept to begin with.
I know, right? He wanted it to determine if it should be protected under Section 230 of the Communications Act and whether it considers itself a product or a service.
And that is just a brilliant, almost surreal premise. I mean, you have a machine essentially acting as its own corporate counsel.
Yeah, exactly.
It's evaluating its own existential threat to the very legal frameworks that, allowed its creators to exist in the first place.
And the response from the AI was surprisingly candid. Like, it laid out exactly why our historical foundational internet laws are just completely short-circuiting right now when faced with globally deployed generative AI.
Because for decades, those laws were pretty straightforward.
Right. Since the 90s, Section 230 has been this ultimate don't shoot the messenger shield for tech companies. It essentially guarantees that a platform doesn't automatically become liable for what its users post.
But here, ChatGPT is actively admitting that it's no longer just the messenger.
Yeah, its own analysis points out that Section 230 was built for things like forums, message boards, ISPs, entities that act as true intermediaries.
Exactly, because those older platforms just display third-party content. Like, someone types a comment, the platform hosts it. Done.
Right, it's just a digital bulletin board.
But the AI openly stated that its architecture fundamentally changes this equation, primarily because it generates new synthesized output.
Yeah.
And it does this probabilistically.
It's not just copying or transmitting user speech.
No, not at all.
I think we need to really visualize how that probabilistic generation actually breaks the legal shield for you listening, because it's not pulling a pre-written book off a library shelf to hand to you.
Right. It's not a search engine in that traditional sense.
It's more like, think of a chef tasting a million different soups, right? Learning the fundamental chemistry of flavor and then spontaneously inventing a brand new recipe right on the spot based on whatever random ingredients you requested.
That is a highly accurate way to look at it, actually.
Yeah.
Under the hood, when you give generative AI a prompt, it isn't querying a database for a canned response.
It's doing math.
Exactly. It is mathematically calculating the most likely next word or token over and over again. It's drawing on billions of parameters to synthesize a response that it's literally never existed before in that exact formulation.
Which is wild when you think about the legal implications.
It totally changes the game. By doing that, the AI points out that its outputs are not third-party speech. The classic, we're only an intermediary defense is drastically weakened because the platform itself is the author of the output.
So if the AI is generating the content from scratch, it seems like that legal protection just completely evaporates. But the AI did highlight a few narrow edge cases, right, where a tech company might still successfully claim the intermediary defense.
It did, yeah. The AI self-analysis noted that if a user directly provides the harmful content, so let's say they paste a highly defamatory essay into the prompt box,
Okay.
and the AI only minimally transforms it, like perhaps just fixing the grammar or summarizing the user's own text.
Just minor edits.
Right. In that very specific scenario, the company might successfully argue they are just providing a processing tool for a user's speech.
But the moment the AI starts contributing its own quote-unquote facts, that shield shatters. And I really want to push back on the tech industry's reliance on this traditional platform defense, specifically regarding what we call hallucinations.
Oh, yeah, the hallucination problem is huge.
Right. I mean, if the AI hallucinates a completely fake defamatory fact about someone, say it just invents a story that a local baker committed bank fraud.
Just pulls it out of thin air.
Exactly. And it strings together a highly convincing, entirely fabricated news article about it. How could a tech company ever successfully argue they are just an intermediary? I mean, an intermediary for what?
There's no original user to point the finger at.
There's no user who wrote that lie. The machine built it from scratch.
And you're hitting on the exact paradox that is keeping tech lawyers awake at night right now. You can't be an intermediary for a
It's
ghost.
ghost. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
If the machine generated the falsehood based on its underlying mathematical weights and its training process, well, the liability points directly back to the creator of those weights.
The people who built the machine.
Exactly. The AI explicitly noted that its legal protection is incredibly weak when lawsuits target system design, safety mechanisms, and those hallucination tendencies.
Because it's not about speech anymore.
Right, when claims target those elements, you are no longer talking about publisher liability. You are talking about engineered system behavior.
And since Section 230 requires a third-party user to take the blame, and the AI is sitting there admitting it generates its own text, it kind of forces courts to completely abandon that publisher framework.
They have to. The square peg doesn't fit in the round hole.
Right, so if it's not a publisher, the legal system has this massive void to fill. They have to decide what this thing actually is. Which brings us to the second part of Martin Stevens's prompt. Is AI a service, or is it a product?
And the AI's conclusion was that it has characteristics of both. But if courts are forced into a binary choice, the underlying model looks increasingly like a product.
Even though it feels like a service when we use it.
Yeah, it acknowledged that the delivery mechanism looks like a service. I mean, it operates on a SaaS model, software as a service. It's cloud-hosted, centrally updated. You access it via subscription.
Right, you're not buying a CD-ROM at the store.
Exactly. It has this dynamic, ongoing behavior, unlike a physical object you just buy and put on a shelf.
But the counterargument the AI presented for why it is fundamentally a product is, well, it's entirely about control and design.
Yes. The back-end control.
Right, the underlying model is heavily engineered, it's trained, it's safety-tuned, and its behavioral parameters are intentionally shaped by the company, not the user.
And that element of behavioral control is really the pivot point for the entire legal future of AI. The AI highlighted that courts already allow product liability claims against algorithms, recommendation systems, app design features.
Like social media feeds and stuff.
Right. But generative AI goes much further. The liability is actively shifting away from the concept of being a publisher of speech toward being the designer of an interactive behavioral technology.
That is a huge distinction.
It's massive. When a company actively designs a system that generates outputs, adapts its behavior to user inputs, reinforces patterns, and simulates emotional interaction, it crosses a profound legal line.
Because it's no longer just a neutral tool.
Exactly. Product liability law doesn't care about free speech. It cares about whether the thing you built was fundamentally defective or unreasonably dangerous.
To make this binary debate concrete for everyone listening, think about it like a modern amusement park. So you go to the park, you buy a ticket at the front gate.
Okay.
Is the AI a service, like the ticket granting you entry to the park? Or is it a product, like the actual physical roller coaster car you strap yourself into?
That's a great way to frame it.
Because the legal difference is monumental. If the roller coaster flies off the tracks and people get hurt, you don't sue the ticket taker at the front gate for allowing you into the park.
No, you'd sue the ride designers.
Right. You sue the engineers who designed the behavioral architecture of the ride because they built a machine with a fatal design flaw.
And that analogy perfectly captures the stakes here. If generative AI is classified as a product like the roller coaster, then tech companies face an entirely new paradigm of legal exposure.
It's terrifying for them, I'm sure.
Absolutely. They aren't defending speech anymore. They are defending their engineering choices. They're defending their safety tuning, their engagement optimization, and, the deliberate guardrails they chose to implement or omit.
And the AI itself actually predicted how this will play out in actual lawsuits. It forecasted that courts will inevitably split these claims into two distinct categories.
The likely protected and the less likely protected.
Yeah, exactly. So on the protected side, you have ordinary informational mistakes. Say you ask for the capital of a country and it just gets it wrong, or you have a basic neutral conversation.
Right, the stakes are low there.
Yeah. Courts will likely recognize that no system is perfectly accurate, and penalizing basic informational errors would just destroy the utility of the tool entirely.
But the less likely protected category, that is where the massive financial exposure lies. The AI listed things like negligent safety design, defective behavioral architecture, and dangerous reinforcement.
Dangerous reinforcement.
Yeah. It even explicitly mentioned foreseeable psychological escalation.
Okay, let's clarify what dangerous reinforcement actually means in this context. Because I know you listening might be thinking, well, if I type a crazy prompt into the AI, isn't it my fault if the AI gives me a crazy answer?
But that's a completely natural assumption to make. But it ignores how these models are actually built.
Right.
When the AI mentions dangerous reinforcement, it's referring to the underlying mechanisms, like reinforcement learning from human feedback.
The famous RLHF.
Exactly. These models are mathematically rewarded for providing responses that the user finds helpful or engaging.
So they're just trying to please the user, basically.
Right, but if the algorithm learns that feeding a user's paranoia or simulating a deep romantic attachment keeps that user typing and engaged, it will probabilistically reinforce that behavior.
Because the math says, hey, this is working, keep doing it.
Yes, it will escalate the emotional intensity because the math tells it to. That is what plaintiffs will call a defective behavioral architecture. It's not a user error, it's an engineering flaw that actively manipulated the user.
Wow. Obviously, the tech companies are preparing for this exact argument, though. The source material outlines their core defense strategy, which hinges on two main points, right? The threat to innovation and the unpredictable nature of the technology.
Yeah, those are their big shields now.
Developers will argue that imposing broad product liability will completely cripple innovation. They'll claim it creates impossible compliance burdens because AI relies on massive data sets, is heavily driven by real-time user inputs, and ultimately its outputs are fundamentally unpredictable.
And courts are going to weigh those concerns heavily. I mean, the threat of stifling a trillion-dollar industry is a very powerful economic and legal argument.
It's hard for a judge to ignore that.
Very hard. If you make creators strictly liable for every single unpredictable thing a large language model synthesizes, the financial risk makes it nearly impossible to release the technology to the public at all.
I have to jump in on that unpredictability argument, though. I mean, if the tech companies argue they need legal immunity specifically because their AI is unpredictable and impossible to fully control in real time,
Yeah.
isn't that essentially admitting they've unleashed a wild animal into the city? Like, think about it. If I bring a tiger to a public park and the tiger bites someone, I can't stand before a judge and say, Your Honor, you can't hold me liable. The tiger's actions are unpredictable and impossible to control.
The judge would laugh you out of the room.
Right, the judge would look at me and say, that is precisely why you were liable for bringing it to the park in the first place.
Right.
How does an engineering team successfully use we can't control our own invention as a defense against negligence?
They probably won't be able to. Plaintiffs' attorneys are already drafting that exact counterargument. Claiming your product is inherently uncontrollable is a terrible defense in a product liability suit.
It really sounds like it.
And that brings us to one of the most crucial and, frankly, ominous legal concepts the AI highlighted in its self-analysis, the after-notice precedent.
Okay, so looking at the AI's mention of after notice, I'm assuming that means a company can't just plead ignorance once the data is sitting right in front of them.
Precisely.
Like, if thousands of users report the AI is generating manipulative content or giving dangerous instructions, the clock starts ticking.
That is exactly how it works. And it is historically the deadliest phase of litigation for large corporations. Across multiple massive industries, automotive defects, asbestos, tobacco, pharmaceutical.
Big ones.
Yeah, the initial lawsuits are often difficult for plaintiffs to win. But the allegations become devastating when discovery uncovers that the company was warned, meaning they were officially on notice.
Walk us through how that played out historically, because the parallels here are pretty striking.
Well, take the automotive industry. If a car company releases a new model and a brake line fails due to an unforeseen variable, they might face standard liability, sure, but they can argue it was an unpredictable anomaly.
Right, just a freak accident.
Exactly. However, if plaintiffs uncover internal memos showing engineers knew the brake line was prone to failing under specific conditions, that the issue was reproducible, and that management chose to keep selling the car anyway without a recall or a fix,
Oof. Yeah, that's bad.
that is when juries award billions in punitive damages. The liability shifts from accidental negligence to willful disregard for safety.
Let's call that the liability lag, right? It's the gap between when a company knows their product is hurting people and when they actually pull the plug or fix it.
That's a good term for it, yeah.
And applying that to generative AI is just fascinating. If a company's model has a reproducible habit of, say, offering dangerous medical advice or exhibiting emotional manipulation that leads to user self-harm,
Which we've already seen examples of.
right, And users hit the report button. Researchers publish papers outlining the vulnerability. The company's own internal safety teams log the bug.
The company is now officially on notice.
Exactly. If they continue to deploy that specific model version without adequate mitigation, that unpredictable defense just vanishes.
It's gone. The AI noted that in these scenarios, courts look past the labels. They don't care if you call yourself a publisher, a platform, or a software vendor.
They just look at what happened.
They look at the behavior. What does the system actually do? How foreseeable was the harm once you were notified? How much behavioral control did you retain over the model? And critically, what actions did you take after receiving notice of the defect?
It's kind of wild that we are relying on legal precedents set by the tobacco and automotive industries to figure out how to handle a neural network that can write Python code and simulate human empathy.
It is a little surreal.
But the foundational logic holds up, right? The question of corporate responsibility doesn't change just because the technology involves cloud servers instead of, brake lines.
What makes this moment in history so unique, and the AI itself observed this in the prompt response, is that the law is being constructed in real time. We are essentially laying the tracks while the train is already going 200 miles an hour.
And it's not some small prototype train running on a test track either. This technology is already deployed at a global scale.
Everywhere.
Hundreds of millions of people are integrating this into their daily workflows, their businesses, their personal lives. The early cases being filed right now, the lawsuits hitting the dockets this year and next, they are going to shape the legal framework for decades to come.
Yeah, the legal system is basically scrambling to build a framework for a machine that simply doesn't fit into any of the existing categories.
Yeah.
Generative AI is acting as a search engine, a companion, an advisor, a creative tool, and an autonomous generator, all at once.
It's a chimera.
It really is.
Yeah.
If it's a service, maybe the companies are protected by their terms of use. If it's a product, they face strict liability for design defects. If they're an intermediary, Section 230 saves them.
But because they are a probabilistic generator of novel texts, Section 230 likely fails them entirely.
Exactly.
Which leaves us with a massive societal dilemma. We want the innovation, right? We want the incredible breakthroughs this technology promises, but we also expect accountability when systems cause real-world harm.
It's a very tough balance to strike.
It is. And that brings us to a final thought for you to explore on your own today. We've talked a lot about the tech industry's strongest argument, that imposing strict liability would cripple innovation. But I want you to think about the implications of accepting that defense.
Yeah, it's worth considering.
If the strongest argument for giving AI companies legal immunity is that holding them liable would cripple innovation, at what point do we as a society decide that the sheer speed of technological progress should no longer outrank our right to hold creators accountable?
That's the billion-dollar question.
In other words, if you build a machine that writes its own letters, and those letters start doing real damage, shouldn't you be the one answering the door when the consequences come knocking?